something to say.
Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of Project Shadow. I'm sorry there wasn't an episode yesterday, but my voice decided to spontaneously go away. And, well, it's hard to do a podcast when you can't hear what I'm saying. I'm sorry for I have no idea what happened. I wasn't coughing a lot. I'm actually feeling a lot better. It's just yesterday, and you can still hear it today. My voice is still quite thin, but yeah, for some reason yesterday, my voice decided to completely vanish on me. So hopefully my voice is okay and we can get through this. We only have 2 more episodes in our... See, I originally wanted these to be the best of the year, and then I got to movies and TV, and yeah. Okay, so today we're talking about films. And yeah, okay. We watched a lot of movies this year. And I'm not going to talk about a lot of them because I really don't want to waste the time, energy, and effort to remember them. This was not a particularly great year for films as far as like the sheer number of really good movies that came out. And so I have broken up the films that we're going to talk about into 3 categories. Things that were on Netflix, things that were controlled by the Disney Corporation, and the one and only movie that made the list that I wanted to talk about that wasn't either of those things. Yeah, that disturbs me more than almost anything else, is that of the things to talk about, I have one movie that was not under the control of either Disney or Netflix. So there's that. And that one movie is Rampage. See, I thought about talking about Pacific Rim Uprising and some of the other films of that nature that came out this year, but Rampage was the kaiju movie of the year, the big budget kaiju movie of the year. If you didn't watch it, Dwayne the Rock Johnson and his beloved white gorilla, oh my goodness, it was so good. And I don't necessarily mean that in the way that like it should win Academy Awards or, you know, should be recognized as a paragon of filmmaking. No, it was a giant monster movie that did everything you want a giant monster movie to do. You all know, if you've been listening for any period of time, I love kaiju films. I love giant monster movies. And when I heard that they were making a movie out of Rampage, I just didn't know what to think. Because, well, there's not a lot of story there. And then they cast Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And, well, the Jumanji movie was impractically good, and a lot of that had to do with him. Oddly enough, the best video game movie I've ever seen based on a video game that doesn't exist. Kinda. So, there's that. And in an attempt to continuously atone for the sins of the Doom movie, that's D-O-O-M, not the D-H-O-O-M movies out of India that are incredible and amazing and over the top fantastic. We got Rampage, which honestly kind of is the best video game movie I've ever seen. Like, it takes the heart of the story. There are giant monsters destroying a city, finds a way to shoehorn the pretense of a story in there so it can have a beginning, middle, and end. And there you go. It didn't need more than that. The characters, yeah, they're thin. The acting is beautifully over the top. And I love that Dwayne Johnson is not only able to play the ultra smart zoologist, but also has the kinship with the animals. I enjoyed this movie. George was a great character. The CGI work in this film was really good as well. It hit all the buttons for me. If you like giant monster movies and you skipped Rampage for some reason, definitely check it out. It's really good. The gorilla is amazing. The wolf, the gator, like all of the characters, they did a very good job. It will not change your life. It will not show you the meaning of life. And if you're wanting a deep character piece or something that really make you think, not the movie for you. But if you just like watching giant monsters destroying cities, yeah, it definitely was the film of the year. And now we move into our next section, which I'm going to save the Disney movies for after the break. So now we're going to talk about Netflix. Netflix put out a lot of movies this year, and most of them were horrible. Utterly horrible. Titan, I think, should get an honorable mention for... It's a movie that could have done good things. Like, Titan and Mute both could have done good things, but just didn't. It just didn't. They could have. Especially Titan. Titan had some moments where I thought it might zig instead of zag, and no, it did exactly what I thought it would do. It was at least competent in that. And of course, for honorable mention, I should mention the Cloverfield Paradox, which I think got hit a little too hard. It is very B-movie, but I like B-movies. I enjoyed it. Again, it's not a great movie. The acting's not amazing. The story is not transformative, but it was, for what it was okay. I enjoyed watching it, and that's really a big thing this year, because there weren't a lot of movies that I enjoyed. I wanted to mention 3 movies on Netflix that I kind of enjoyed, but for very different reasons. First off, I wanted to talk about Sierra Burgess is a Loser. I don't know how I feel about this movie. I really don't. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. It's basically, I don't know how to well, I don't think you can really spoil this film. Like, you watch the trailer and you pretty much know what it is. It's Mean Girls with catfishing, except for we don't have anybody really fall to the dark side, kinda. I don't know, it is a weird catfishing romance story, and I found it oddly sweet and endearing, and I really liked how they dealt with the characters. They give us a lot of trope characters that we expect to see in a high school film like this, where you have the jocks and the cheerleaders and the nerds and the geeks and all that. But there was something about the way this movie was done that I found it very endearing. And I don't know, I enjoyed it, but there's just this nagging weird thing in the back of my head where it's kind of a movie about catfishing and how that can end okay. If you were not aware, the basic plot of the film revolves around Sarah Burgess and her love interest, who is in love with this cheerleader, who, when the love interest asks the cheerleader for her phone number, she gives them Sierra's phone number because she's looking for work, and she puts up a flyer with her phone number on it, so that's how the cheerleader has it. And the guy calls Sierra, and hijinks ensue. There's not much here. If you just want to smile, like, it's a smiley movie, which is one of the things that I needed this year. Yeah, it made me smile. It's cute. It's also about how catfishing can lead to romance. And but if you want to watch a cute romantic comedy kind of thing, it was good. Alex Strangelove is the next one on my list. This is a coming out story. I'm kind of over coming out stories, but this one was cute and did things that I'm not used to seeing in a coming out movie. And I mean, that's the whole plot of the movie is he or isn't he? And, you watch the trailer and, instantly, well, it is almost as bawdy as the first American Pie movie, but without really stepping over the line too much. I like the characters that are in it. In some ways, like, if John Hughes made gay movies, like, this is the gay Pretty in Pink. This is not really the gay Breakfast Club, but, the gay 16 Candles. Like, it kind of fits into that pantheon of John Hughes movies. So if you're a fan of those kinds of films and wonder if anybody's making them anymore, this kind of is that kind of a movie. But it'll just make you smile. It'll make you laugh at some points. There's some parts of the movie that I think are really funny. There's especially a sequence dealing with a hallucinogenic frog that is quite good. Yeah, it again won't change your life, but it was worth watching. And the last one, which I actually think is worth watching, especially if you have kids, I think this was a very interesting film, and that was Next Gen. When I saw the trailers for this movie, I thought it was going to be a knockoff of Big Hero 6. And in some ways, a little bit, but not really. Like, you could tell that it was probably originally conceived as, a knockoff Big Hero 6. It has a lot of elements of that, but the characters and the setting is so different. Having such an anti-authoritarian character, just, such a rebellious character as our lead was very entertaining and rather enjoyable. The message of the story kind of flits back and forth between, technology will eventually destroy us all. Technology will be the thing that saves us, and we shouldn't offshore all of our relationships to robots and technology. But if you can get past, like, evil Steve Jobs, who is definitely a character in this movie, it has a really interesting relationship with, the people in your life as they get older. One of the most poignant aspects of this movie is our titular robot basically breaks out of the lab before all of its components are installed. And so it has very limited memory. And to keep its memories of its time outside the lab, it starts deleting other functions and other things that it doesn't need. And that one is, major plot points that I don't want to give away for the actual film itself, but as somebody who has watched several members of the family kind of go down to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, it rang true to me in a very interesting way, even though it's about a giant robot who can basically take on armies by himself. Which is not a spoiler. That happens like the first time you meet him. So that's not really a spoiler. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it, especially if you have kids. I think your kids will really enjoy it. It was really good. It's a movie I might actually watch again, like have on in the background while I'm doing things. I don't know that I would sit down and watch it again. If you have kids, they probably will watch it over and over and over again. The main character is a lot like Vanellope from Wreck-It Ralph. So if you have some kids in your family that are really into the Wreck-It Ralph movies and really like Vanellope, then they probably will really like this film as well. So now, just before we go over to break, I do want to say there are a lot of movies that I did not get to see this year because I have a lot of problems with my legs and my back, and as you hear me often call our local theater the Pain Palace. So there are some films that came out in theaters this year that I have yet to see because they're not available yet, because I didn't feel like they were worth 2 days of leg and back pain to go see them in the theater. And it takes a lot to get me to go to a theater to see a movie because of that. So, I have not seen Ralph Breaks Ralph Breaks the Internet or any of those. So there are some films that I'll probably talk about next year that came out this year that I just haven't seen yet. So if I missed your favorite, not Netflix, um, not Disney movie, definitely let me know, because I may have just missed it. It may have just passed under the radar, or it may have been one of those movies that I didn't really enjoy and didn't want to talk about all that much, because I'm trying to limit this mainly to films that I actually did like. So when we come back, we will talk about the movies that Disney owns. And we're back. Disney controls way too much of our entertainment world. And the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies I'm going to be talking about are all from a company owned by Disney. Or actually, I think one of them is from Disney itself. And that's the one I was going to start with first. And that's The Incredibles 2. Okay, so I know that this movie has a lot of mixed feelings around it. I enjoyed it. I think it did rehash the first film a bit too much, except for this time from Elastigirl's point of view. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it did feel more than... And I'm going to talk about Solo in a minute. And I will say that The Incredibles 2, even more than Solo, felt like a cynical cash grab on the part of the Disney Corporation, because it didn't really have a reason for being. I think the story would have been much more interesting if we would have dealt with them getting through high school and, through school. Like Dash in school, that was one of the most entertaining parts of the first film, even though it wasn't in there that much. And I just lost her name. Violet. Violet's time in school was also very interesting. There's some of that in this film, not as much as I would have liked. Again, I feel like they created a new syndrome for this movie, and I don't think that was necessary, at least not in the way that they did it. But since there will inevitably be an Incredibles 3, I would like actually more time with the family dynamics. I mean, Jack is an interesting character. I would actually like to see him mature slightly. Like, that's one of the things I do want for the next movie. This movie takes place literally right after the first one, because the first one ends with the Underminer coming up. This actually begins with the Underminer coming up and them saving everybody from him. I would like a bit of a time break, because I think, Dash in high school would be interesting, Violet in college would be interesting, and an older Jack who can talk would be interesting, just because it would change the dynamics enough that it would allow you to write a very different story than the one that they're doing. I doubt that's going to happen. Jack's going to be a baby forever. But it wasn't bad. I definitely would watch it again, but not... This isn't Toy Story. Like, the Toy Story movies, they're all good. Almost, borderline great. I mean, Toy Story 3 may be the best of the Toy Story movies. Cars 3 is definitely, I think, the best of the Cars movies. I don't know if Incredibles will do that with... Maybe Incredibles 3 will be the best Incredibles movie, but it feels like a sequel. It was a sequel. Meh. It was fine. Okay, so Solo, a Star Wars story. Oh my goodness. I enjoyed Solo. And I don't know how many of you did. Mainly because not a lot of people went to the theater to see it. And I think that was intentional. I have said for a very long time that I felt that Solo was intended to be not necessarily a flop, but an underperforming Star Wars movie. I think that was intended. I think that was baked into its DNA. Because, one, if you're going to do movies about any of the characters from the original series, Han Solo is definitely going to be one that people are going to want a movie on, because so much of his story in canon is up for grabs that you could do that with. Him and Princess Leia, we kind of have Luke almost too locked in to do this kind of a story for him. I still want my Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, though. Definitely, please give me that. I want Cowboy Obi-Wan in the deserts of Tatooine. I want it. I want it. Make that happen. But of course, as soon as you recast an actor like Harrison Ford, there's going to be some resistance to it. And that was kind of the test marketing for this, is could they recast and get a big enough audience? And I think the answer that they got was a maybe. Because when you actually look at the numbers for Solo, it didn't do as bad as a lot of people want to make it sound. But it did underperform what a Star Wars movie usually does. And a lot of that's because Rogue One was unexpectedly successful. I don't think that they, really anticipated a Star Wars flick with no characters that you know from previous media, unless you watched the Clone Wars animated series. Because Saul Guerrera, premiered in that. All of the other characters were fresh and original for that movie. But it did better than they expected. And you have to modulate expectations, or successful movies look like a failure. And I'll never forget this. I forget which album it was, but it was it Music or Drown World? It was a Madonna album that came out and went like double platinum almost instantly, and was considered a flop because it didn't sell as well as her previous album. And that's when I realized that the press is stupid. Anybody would have been ecstatic with the sales, but, for any other album it would have sold great, but because all we care about is growth in our capitalist economy, it was deemed a failure. And I do think that Solo takes a lot of pressure off of Episode 9, whatever it eventually be called, whatever it's called, because as long as it performs in the ballpark of what a Skywalker flick, a movie in the Skywalker saga, does, it will be seen as successful. And again, I think that was part of the purpose of Solo. These intermezzo films were meant to tap down excitement. Now, having said that, I loved Solo because they were honest to the character. He is a bumbling idiot who's incapable of doing anything right. And if it wasn't for the people around him, would have died over and over and over again. And that's the character that we meet in this movie, because that's who Han Solo is. I'll fight you on this. Rewatch the movies. That's who Han Solo is. That's why I never liked Han Solo in the extended universe, because they gave into the fan service Han Solo of him being some kind of like superhero. And of course, Lando Calrissian was the breakaway wonderful thing of the movie. And if they're going to do any more of these, could we please get Donald Glover back and do another Lando movie? Maybe call it Love Commander? I would definitely go to the Pain Palace to watch that. Definitely. So, Solo was good. And now we get into the realm of the Marvel movies. We have 3 movies here that we're going to talk about. We're going to start with Ant-Man and the Wasp, just because we're going to do them in half alphabetical order. This was a good heist movie. I thought it was actually a little bit better than the first Ant-Man movie because it didn't have the baggage of explaining Ant-Man and his powers. I think the first Ant-Man movie, it was a good movie, but it had a lot of origin story stuff that it had to get through to get to being a good movie. I really like how this worked. I liked the story. I liked the pacing. The end was wonderful. And I know it's the last of the 3 to come out, but I wanted to didn't have a lot to say about it, so I just wanted to get it out of the way. I enjoyed it. If you like heist movies, if you like Paul Rudd, it's a Paul Rudd comedy action flick, and it was very good. I enjoyed it. Black Panther. Oh my goodness. I do not have enough good words to say about Black Panther. As we already talked about in my top tracks of the year, the soundtrack for Black Panther has been the soundtrack of the year for me. And I mean that in several different ways. I've been listening to Ludwig Göransson's actual soundtrack for the Black Panther movie, and he released a remix album of, I think, 5 tracks from the soundtrack. They're so good. They're so good. You should definitely check it out if you haven't listened to them already. I don't know what I can say about Black Panther that hasn't been said already. It is a wonderful movie. It was great to see. It is up there and probably is my favorite of the Marvel movies, just because the action sequences were astounding. The characters were very well written and very well fleshed out, including the villain. Killmonger was an amazing villain who had a knack of almost convincing you that he's right even when he's not, which is a very hard road to, go down. The story was good. The acting was amazing. There's nothing bad to say about this movie. From every aspect was done so well that, it is kind of now, it's up there with the first Superman movie in like the pantheon of this is how you do a superhero movie. Like, this is how you do it. And a lot of that comes from being able to have developed the origin story of both Wakanda and the Black Panther character in in Civil War, which was necessary to get that out of the way so that this story could be what it was. Visually, it was breathtaking. The characters, the world that it built. Like, I want so many more movies set in Wakanda. I want so much here. Like, they did such a good job. I'm in love. And last and most obvious, Avengers Infinity War. I am still flummoxed to this day that Marvel talked Disney into letting them do the snap. Now, I know that those of us who were familiar with comics, we knew it was going to happen. What surprised me is that it happened. Because a big tentpole movie like this, allowing it to have such a dark ending, I didn't think Disney had it in them. I really didn't think Disney had it in them. That if it was going to happen, it was going to happen earlier in the film, and they were going to find some way to mitigate it or make it better before you got to the end, because Marvel superhero movies end triumphantly. Like, they do. That's just the formula that they set up. And letting this movie have this dark ending was a stroke of brilliance on their part that I just didn't see coming. Because I honestly, when I think about what will make the mouse the most money, because it's the easiest way to think about a Disney flick, how will this make Disney more money? Happy movies generally make more money than sad movies. And to not only give this movie the sad ending of the snap and everything that follows that, but that end card when it pops up and says Thanos will return. I got chills just thinking about that. And the fact that Disney, after 10 years, is still able to make superhero films that can give me chills. That's amazing, and good on you. I wish I had some movies that weren't in these categories to talk about, and hopefully next year we will. But we'll see. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, consider liking it. If, depending on the app that you're listening to me on, you may be able to rate the individual episodes or the podcast itself. It really does help me. It tells the algorithm that it should share me with more people, and that really does help out a lot. If you got a buck you can throw my way, head over to Well, depending on the app, there'll be a button that says support, or in the show notes, you'll see a link that says support on Anchor. If you click that, that'll let you support me at the $1, $5, or $10 levels. That money really does help me out a lot. Today, I spent over $300 buying software, so the books that come out next year will look good. So, fingers crossed that y'all like the books. And thank you for making that possible. I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of my readers and, all of y'all. So, thank you so much for everything that you've done for me over the years. We have one more episode. The next one will be on TV series, and then we're done for the year. So until next time. Oh, follow me on Twitter. I'm CE Dorset on Twitter. You can find links to everything that I do over at projectshadow.com, which you will notice is getting a facelift because I'm wanting to do more stuff over there. Until next time, don't forget, have the fun. Bye.